Well, legendary investor Wilbur Ross is known as a turnaround king. He's known for restructuring the U.S. steel and auto parts industry. So what does he think the auto industry needs to do to survive? Wilbur Ross is chairman and CEO of W.L. Ross & Company. Wilbur, great to have you with us.
Good to be back on.
You have certainly taken companies out of bankruptcy. You've made them stronger. Why won't that be the case for the auto industry?
Well, I think the auto industry is fundamentally different because of the complexity of its structure and the fragility of the economy. When we worked with the steel companies and bought them out of bankruptcy, the general economy was not in bad shape. It was just problems specific to that one industry. That's a very big difference because right now you have a circumstance where the suppliers to the automotive industry are in bad shape. They've been hurt by the volume declines. They were hurt earlier this year by commodity price. Very few of them could withstand the write-off of receivables that would occur if one of the big three filed.
Right.
The big three pay you on a 45-day basis. That means at any point in time you have 15% of your whole year revenue out to them in a receivable. Very few companies could withstand that.
So, Wilbur, let me ask you this, because through International Automotive Components, which is made up of business units of Lear as well as Collins and Aikman,
right.
You are exposed in the auto industry. Have you been have you had any troubles getting paid by some of your customers, essentially?
No, so far they have been paying pretty meticulously on the dot.
Are you pulling lines of credit to them?
No, we're not. We don't think that that's an appropriate thing to do because all that would accomplish is force them into bankruptcy sooner. We're of the belief that the government has finally come to the very belated realization the economy can't afford to have these fellows go down. It's nuts to try to do that. And I don't think the Bush administration wants to go out as the one that plunged America into a Great Depression. So I'm relatively confident that the federal government will punt it over to the Obama administration by providing them some money to get them through the next month or two.
Would your company, International Automotive Components, be able to survive if one of the three domestic automakers goes bankrupt?
I think we'd survive. The question is in what form, and we've been obviously doing a lot of contingency planning. Because while we have confidence that the right decision is to bail them out, we're not 100% sure that that will happen. And therefore, we have been doing some fair amount of contingency planning. As a group, we're in relatively good shape in that we have no net debt overall in our global IAC. That's very unusual in automotive. But a different question is, what would be your business model going forward if you compound the already big problems of volume being small with the demise of one of the companies? And I really do think the probabilities are that there would be the cascade.
Right.
One would go out, that would put out some suppliers. Everybody has the same suppliers, so that would interrupt production elsewhere. It's just a domino effect.
Now, what's so interesting about your comments, Wilbur, is you said that you think that you'd be able to survive if one of the big three went bankrupt. That's been an argument, that if one of the big three goes bankrupt, then the auto suppliers will go out of business, and it'll be a big chain effect. So how would you survive should part of the domestic auto industry simply go away? Would your focus be more on the foreign and abroad?
No, well, let me correct that.
Okay.
The domestic company, I don't think, could survive without some severe challenges itself. But our U.S. company is separate from the European company, separate from the Brazilian company, and separate from the Japanese company. So if Armageddon were to come, there are kind of firewalls that could come up. But we really don't want to go down that road. We don't think that's the right solution. And it's not a necessary solution. Ron Gettelfinger, the head of the UAW, has made it clear the union is willing to make some sacrifice. The suppliers are going to try to be supportive. It's clear that the bank debt and the public debt should be exchanged for equity. But it's also clear, and it was notably missing from Corker's legislation, if I understand it correctly, he didn't say anything about the dealers having to make a contribution. And the fact is that GM and Ford and Chrysler have too many dealers, too many weak dealers. That's a big burden on them, and that's also part of what would have to be cleaned up. So I really feel that the Corker and his band of people simply proved that politics is local. They have the transplants factories in their districts. They don't have UAW factories. They have dealers, so they don't put into their plans any concessions by the dealers. This is raw politics. It's terrible politics, and it's disgusting that the same Congress that not long ago spent a huge amount of wasteful money on subsidizing tax benefits for Indian casinos, for motor speedways,
right,
all of which happen to be in these same states that are complaining about the automotive industry. Even if you remember tax breaks for the guy who makes the wooden bow and arrow for children.
Right, right.
Something's wrong with public policy when those things get enacted, and yet they can't enact something on automotive.
Interesting points. Wilbur, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.